Welcome everybody to the Depths of Motherhood podcast. This is a special season dedicated to the tribe of the mother. But also I know any mothers listening will find this extremely valuable. I've created each episode to offer simple, digestible, and supportive information, which I hope will educate and inspire anyone who listens. So this is by popular demand. Please help us to educate and support the tribe holding the mother. Look forward to passionate and highly knowledgeable guests dedicated to reclaiming the essence of birth and embracing conscious parenting. Throughout our time together, our guests will serve as the guiding voices, illuminating the path towards a deeper understanding of preconception, pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. This is with the mother and the baby being the center of the exploration. In the show notes, you'll discover the link to Nourished Mother package, which will offer many different resources to complement each episode. This is free for all members in the Women's Circle, or £33 for everybody who just wants to purchase the package. A heartfelt thank you to our incredible guests and immense gratitude to my partner for supporting me on this creation. And finally, last but not least, special thank you to Araya, my daughter, for being the endless well of inspiration. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you and your family are well. Before we go into this episode, I just want to put it out there that I am preparing for season 8, and I am looking for people to come and join the show as a guest speaker. So we are starting with the foundations, and we are going deep into the roots of motherhood to explore ways in which we can find safety, hope, and inspiration through our motherhood journey. We'll be looking at the societal expectations and stripping it all back to finding that place inside of us, a deep knowing of what nourishes us, what inspires us to move forward through this role, whilst also having this strong, deep connection with who we are beyond this role as a mother. As we know, change is inevitable, and there are always things arising within us, in our family, in our immediate community, and in the collective that we are being called to interact with. So I want to know what is happening in your world. What is alive within you right now? What is it that you're noticing, observing in the collective, whether it's through your immediate community or what you're seeing on social media? What conversations do you feel are ready to be had? And even more so, the ones that seem confusing or complex, or you're noticing the nuances within that topic. Let's bring that to the table. Let's make it raw. Let's see what is coming through so we can be with all that is arising without needing to have answers. We can do that by bringing the topic forward, seeing what comes through in our words, and noticing what is arising within our body, trying to get a bigger picture so that we can show up in deep love, compassion, and integrity moving forward. So if something comes up and you're like, yes, let's talk about that, please send me a message through one of my Instagram profiles, either Women's Circle Online or The Depths of Motherhood. Some of the topics I'm really wanting to explore is this transition from this online community into the physical. What is happening there? So this deep hunger and craving for physical community, but the bridge to be made back to it, because a lot has happened over the past few years with physical isolation happening, and also just the way that it has been conditioned into our mind to stay isolated, to keep at a distance. So how can we bridge the gap to make deep and meaningful conversations and to be able to hold the discomfort that might come as we start to interact again, to understand what conscious communication means and to be able to practice it? And with that, it's closely linked to emotional intelligence and how we can hold space for what is happening within us as discomfort might come with interacting with the outside world. How can we step forward and be with the incredible joy of life and also the discomfort that can come with being a human being? All right, so let's get into this show because it is an incredible episode. Today we have Julia Demillones Moore. She is a mother, a herbalist, and the founder of Moonbeam Steams. She is a women's health advocate who came into this work through her own struggles with painful periods, hormonal imbalances, and postpartum depletion. And in reconnecting with the ancient practice of vaginal steaming, which has roots in her Filipino lineage, she found a path of profound healing and now shares that wisdom with others. Today, we explore the 3 stages of postpartum steaming, the immediate phase after postpartum, the first 30 days, with the release and cleanse of the uterus. Then going into the early postpartum from 1 month to a year, talking about building the body's reserves, strengthening the womb. And then later into postpartum, supporting circulation and energy return. She shares about when it's safe to begin steaming, whether you've had a vaginal birth or cesarean, tearing, or episiotomy. She goes on to share herbs for supporting the womb, the nervous system, and postpartum healing, and how during the final weeks of pregnancy, it can actually be of support to prepare the body for labor. If you go to the show notes, there is a free PDF that Julia has gifted to us. It's also going to help us to get started with this practice. You can find Julia's links in the show notes as well. She has a womb alchemy program, which is 6 months long and designed for women who are deeply committed to preparing their body, mind, and spirit for conception and pregnancy. I want to say a massive thank you to Julia once again for joining us on the show. I absolutely loved this conversation. Before we go in, let us check in with our body. How is your body feeling today in sensation? Even if the mind is loud and there's thoughts running through, or even if there's a dullness, what do the sensations feel like inside of you? I can use words to ask you, does it feel heavy or light inside you? Is there energy moving around to your fingers or your toes? What is happening inside of your body today? How does your breath move? Is it deep or is it shallow? For one moment, open up your body, lengthen through your spine, take the deepest breath in that you've taken today, and gently, with a soft jaw, let that breath leave your body. Thank you so much for being here. Hey, welcome, Julia, to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Danielle.
Let's get into this juicy conversation. But before we do, could you share with the listeners how you got to doing the work that you do? What inspires you to show up every day to talk about all the beautiful things that you share on your social media?
Yes, so I think I like to share that I got into this work with vaginal steaming from my path of working with plants
Mm.
and like this intersection of my journey into motherhood. So I'm a mom of 2, and I've experienced postpartum like 4 times, including miscarriage, pregnancy release, and I learned about steaming many years ago before I became a mother. I was in college taking a research project on exploring Filipino herbal medicine. And that's when I read about vaginal steaming. It was in the back of my mind. It wasn't until about a year and a half after having my first baby that it came back to the front of my mind. And I was in the throes of postpartum. I was having a really challenging time with the transition from maiden to motherhood. And I'm just so thankful for this practice because it was an anchor for me physically and spiritually as I was navigating that time in my life. It still is very much an anchor in my daily life. So that's kind of how I came to the practice. And I just love to, well, I guess it's important for me to affirm and acknowledge that postpartum steaming is this global traditional postpartum healing modality. And it's indigenous healing technology that's been carried on by folk practitioners, granny midwives, lay midwives, and women helping women. Um, Unfortunately, the mainstream has like grasped it and taken the stance that, oh, it's just a celebrity trend, it's a fad. Um, but this practice has the potential to benefit so many women, so many mothers and, the people who are really needing to be supported by this ancient medicine of water and warmth and plants. So I do want to just give thanks and honor the many lineages that this practice comes from all over the world, which is such a beautiful statement to the wisdom of women. And this practice is actually so near and dear to my heart, and it's in my ancestral lineage. My great grandmother from the Philippines was a manghilot. So she was a healer. She helped people have their babies. She helped massage people with their ailments. She used herbs and prayer. So the mother of my grandmother. And, I had no idea that she had done this work. And, I never got the honor to receive her teachings personally, but I'm just inspired by the stories that my aunties and my mom, my grandma shared to me after I began doing this work. They were so nonchalant about sharing it. She's like, oh, she did this. And I'm like, no one told me this. Okay, cool. So it's a beautiful connection to this womb continuum that I'm part of, and it's part of me. My direct teachers in regards to steaming is Kelly Garza from Steamy Chick and Chris Gonzalez of The Way of Yin. And yeah, currently I'm in the Peristeam Hydrotherapy Institute as learning steam therapy in an advanced way to support a variety of gynecological issues.
Wow, what an incredible story and journey you are on. It really touched me when you're sharing about your ancestral line as well, and how you just came to receive this information that's probably been around you and knocking on your door energetically. And then you receive the stories and it starts to make sense as well. I had a similar story with steaming because in my postpartum, I'd heard about yoni steaming, but it's not something that I actually practiced. It just came to me as like, this is the practice that I'm going to include in my postpartum. And I think one of the reasons was it meant that I got to have some time alone as well. It was such a beautiful time for all of us because I got the time alone and my partner was with Araya, the baby. It was such a nice moment to help me transition into motherhood. And I mean, I'm still transitioning into motherhood, to be honest with you. But it was these moments of being with my senses. And that's kind of where my journey went. I mean, don't get me wrong, there were so many times she was sat on my knee breastfeeding, I wasn't always alone, but there was an intention putting myself first to heal and feel again, because there was such an opportunity for me to close off and pretend that all of this, what I would say is trauma to my body, didn't happen. Like I could have easily gone down that path. I'm naturally moved towards running away from things. But steaming brought me to the present and said, okay, like I'm going to sit with you. I'm going to be with you. And I felt held, and I felt something more than what was physically there. Like I felt something like the wisdom, like you're talking about. There's a wisdom this has been passed down that's carried through, and a remembrance. So it's such a beautiful, I really loved what you were sharing there. Thank you. And today we're really getting into that postpartum phase of how we can bring this practice in. When is it generally considered safe to begin steaming?
So, yeah, after vaginal birth, it's typically safe to begin to steaming 2 to 3 days after having your baby, actually. The main factor to really consider, and this is where working with a steam practitioner or a midwife can be really helpful, is that the uterine arteries need to be closed because you're bringing warmth and circulation. And if your uterine artery is still open, that could, cause hemorrhage or just extra bleeding that, of course, when we're postpartum, we want to be containing. So having the uterine artery will be the most important observation. So, being aware of your body, of your bleeding, when you notice that your bleeding is slowing down. that's when you can observe that, okay, my uterine artery is closed. And again, if you're working with a midwife or a steam practitioner, they can support you in confirming that. Typically, there's 3 stages of postpartum steaming. We have the immediate postpartum, which is the first 30 days. And this steaming, we will be focusing on supporting the cleanse of the uterus, helping cleanse the fluids, the lochia, as well as supporting rest of the uterus. There's the second stage of postpartum steaming, which is early postpartum. So that's after a month up to a year. And the steaming will support strengthening and replenishing, building up those reserves that were used from growing a baby and birthing a baby. And then the third stage is the later postpartum. So from up to a year, post a year, more than a year, it's really never too late to steam for postpartum, even if you're months, years after having your baby. And that later postpartum will be supportive to boosting energy and circulation. So again, if you're past the 30 days, steam is a great way to step in to any extra healing that you want to do. If you're still experiencing physical or emotional signs of needing further support.
So obviously in postpartum, there's still going to be bleeding. Is this the only time that it's recommended for steaming, when there's actually blood present
Yeah.
in postpartum?
So yes, when we are menstruating and when we're pregnant as well, uterine arteries are open. So the blood is fresh. It's bringing in nourishment to our baby, and in menstruation, it's helping cleanse the uterus of the lining. When we're postpartum, the uterine artery will be closed, and everything is just flushing out. So it is safe to steam when your uterine artery is closed, and the steam will help that flushing out, that cleanse of the fluids, the lochia that is being released.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. And is it so for women that experience vaginal tearing or a perineal tearing or episiotomy, does this differ as well in the time that they can begin the steaming?
Steaming is supportive to cleansing sutures and stitches. So it really depends on the level of episiotomy, the level of tearing, because there is a point where if you're on a certain spectrum of tearing, you're going to want to be keeping your legs closed to help the healing of the tissues. But I would say if there's been just minimal tearing, you can still steam for the first 2 and 3 days after birth. But if there's more extensive tearing, to wait maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks until you are able to open your legs more.
Yeah, I experienced tearing level 2, however it's described. And I had stitches, so I had like 7 stitches. And I started steaming 3 days afterwards. It felt intuitively, it felt right. And I felt more comfortable like with my knees together and I was on a toilet seat. So the squatting down wasn't so much, like my knees were kind of in line with my hips. So there wasn't so much like of an opening happening. And that for me felt really comforting. But then I've spoke to other women who've had a similar experience and it just didn't feel right. So it's like also just not maybe trying and seeing how it feels. And if it doesn't feel right, just like for that moment, it's fine.
Absolutely. And really trusting your body. And like you said, that it felt the right thing for you. I think that's the most important thing. If it feels supportive, if you feel held and comfortable,
Mm.
why not?
Yeah. So what about cesarean as well? Is there a time after cesarean to wait?
So, in the case of a cesarean birth, we recommend to wait 6 weeks postpartum, but what we're really looking for is for the incision to be fully healed. The skin needs to fully close. And what we found is that steaming might inhibit that process. Might make the stitching feel uncomfortable. But again, you know, if you've had a cesarean and you want to start steaming and it's like 3 weeks and you do a very mild, light steam to see how it feels and it feels good, then go with that. The steam is very helpful at healing scar tissue and again, promoting circulation. So just checking in with your body. But after the incision is healed, it's a really great modality to combine with scar tissue healing.
I had the same, well, not with the cesarean, but because I was healing, so I had scar tissue. So maybe like 6 months later, the way that I was incorporating the steam was much more to do with the healing of the scar tissue. I felt like kind of like tense almost. Everything felt so tense. So I started to do the steam with the intention of just being with everything that arises. And then after the steam, I would do like gentle massage and that would be with me and my partner as well. So it would be like gentle massage around like my inner thighs, around my perineum, and then onto my vulva. And this was almost like a transition as well into making love because I felt really, as soon as it was touched, I just felt myself like contract. And one, because it was uncomfortable, but two, because of the memories of what happened, because I had a doctor like really pushing down on my vagina. So that's why there was the tearing. So it was like there was the physical, emotional, like all these aspects, and it was like a support to cross over this bridge to reconnect more deeply with my partner as well. And also it helped me to soften and open and be moist because if I have the memories come up and kind of are going to like my nervous system starts to awake as the memories come through, then I dry up, like it's just like body's not wanting to have sex and reproduce right now. Like it's going through something. So it really, really helped me with the trauma side of it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a beautiful way to also, have your partner be part of your healing.
Mm. Yeah. And my daughter sees it as well, like she comes in, she wanted to do a steam the other day. We just put a bowl of water underneath her. It was just like warm. And we sat there and she's facing me and she put some herbs in and it was super cute. My partner felt left out. So he like came and sat with us. So we're all sat in a circle. And I was like, oh my gosh. She was like, I want to do a yoni steam. Well, in her like 3-year-old language.
So beautiful.
And this is it, isn't it? It's like reclaiming these practices like that have been passed down and we're learning, we're remembering again. And I just think it's so wonderful that, for instance, you are bringing this forward with the education as well to make it less fearful, which I think there is a lot of fear around it. There is a lot of like, well, what if something goes wrong? So let's like use that to go into the next part. What are the benefits and are there any risks involved?
I think the biggest risk involved is a hemorrhage because you are bringing in so much warmth and circulation, which is why, particularly postpartum steaming, it is helpful to get, a consultation with a practitioner so that they can check the list off of sensitivities, contraindications, and really give you a custom guided STEAM protocol that can be supportive to your unique situation, your unique cycle. So it's really important with postpartum steaming to have some tools of first aid to stop bleeding.
Mm.
And of course, seek medical attention when you need to, but there's also other ways to support. And this is not just like the the most extreme case of hemorrhaging. Any type of bleeding postpartum, you can have tools to stop that. For instance, immediate bed rest.
Mm.
That could be a sign of your body saying, "Whoa,
Mm.
slow down." And this is a very important, critical time to really listen to our bodies, because how we care for ourselves during this postpartum cocoon will really impact how we have our periods when they come back, how we experience perimenopause and menopause, decades to come later. So just having the perspective that this time is it can be an opportunity to really nourish and replenish ourselves with deep rest. But yeah, so some benefits that steaming provides, particularly for postpartum, our uterus just did a hell of a job, you know, growing a baby, birthing a baby. So steaming is a great way to support and heal the uterus. Like I mentioned at the beginning, clearing out lochia, clearing out those fluids in a timely manner, because many women actually are like having lochia for weeks on end. And the benefits of cleaning out lochia more quickly is it can be life-saving because it can prevent infection. And, the steam is so amazing at drawing out discharge and fluids, which can also support like less contractions. Like the uterus doesn't have to work as hard to release the fluids because the steam is supporting, which also will help the uterus go back to the size that it needs to be and in the position, if it doesn't have as much residue in the space. And when we focus on like uterine reset in the postpartum time, it sets our body up for a healthy period when it's time for our period to come back.
It's like this womb continuum, right?
Yeah.
And as you're speaking, I'm just thinking about the whole practice of a steam is to start with it very early on, like before postpartum, but sometimes for many women, it just comes alive during postpartum as a tool. And so that's where it comes into life. But now there is so much about steaming. I feel like if I would have done it before, I could have created this relationship with the steam earlier on. And like, I would have known how the steam felt as it touched my skin and how my body responded to that. Because actually the first few times I remember that the biggest thing was like just feeling comfortable being in that space, because I'd never had steam touch my vulva going to my vagina before. So it was like that whole thing of like, oh, this is a new experience. So if anyone's listening to this now, maybe you're in postpartum, but probably if you're following season 7, you're going through the journey, is like, you can do this. Like, if you're pregnant, obviously not, but before pregnancy in the preconception phase, it's a great time to begin, even before that. But just seeing this can be a tool throughout our life.
It is such a beautiful tool that we can utilize throughout all the cycles of our lives, from our first bleed to those years when our body's learning how to menstruate. And we can actually utilize steam to prepare for labor. So once our body is like 38 weeks, we can start to introduce gentle steam to bring in moisture, that circulation, and that relaxation, which really sets us up for, being open to go into labor.
I'm really glad you said that, actually, because this is one of the like questions is it okay at this time? I feel like for me, when I was giving birth, as soon as I started to feel the contractions and go into labor, I was like, oh, my muscles in my pelvis feel really locked in. Like they felt really locked in. And then it wasn't until after, as I explored what this meant, like through understanding the body more, that I realized that through my whole life, I had been training my pelvic muscles to be in like a contracted state. And that for me was coming from like the myth of, if you don't hold everything in or pull everything in, then you'll be like peeing yourself after you've given birth, or it won't be so nice when you have sex. And
So I had this in the back of my mind subconsciously, and I didn't even know it was there. And so all my life I've been like drawing in and pulling up like all of my practices. And then giving birth, I'm like, oh my God, it came to me. I'm like, I don't know how to lengthen my muscles. I don't know how to relax them. And it was through the steaming that I realized, oh my gosh, I am feeling a difference. I am feeling a softening and an opening. And it was just like this moment of awakening. I couldn't believe it.
Absolutely. It's so powerful.
Really, like honestly. So for women that are steaming postpartum, how often would you recommend for them to have this practice, and how long would the steam be?
Mm, Okay, yeah. So for it, the immediate postpartum, it's to steam every day for 30 days.
Hmm.
And you want to start off with just 10-minute steam. And again, this really depends on your unique constitution, what your cycle type was before you had a baby. But 10 minutes is a great time to steam. And, generally, if you've had like a strong 28, 29, 30-day cycle and you don't have any sensitivities to steam, then a 30-minute steam session is just perfect. So for every day for 30 days. And then after that, when you're kind of transitioning to like the early postpartum version of steaming, we want to hold back on steaming from every day to now just once a month
Mm.
and using herbs. We'll get into the herbs a little bit, but using herbs that are staunch any type of bleeding to kind of hold back on your period if possible. It doesn't work for everyone because everyone has different hormones, but the idea is to use this steaming to support the strengthening and kind of consolidation of the fluids before your period comes back.
Wow, that's interesting. So what kind of herbs would you recommend in this immediate postpartum phase? And do they differ going into the next phase?
So yeah, for the immediate postpartum, and I would say that this definitely has some overflow into the next couple phases of postpartum yoni steaming, but to choose herbs that with certain qualities. So one of the qualities would be hemostatic herbs, which means they prevent bleeding. Herbs that are nutritive, so they're very rich in minerals to help rebuild the blood, and herbs that have a quality that's like soothing and moistening, good with healing tissues. So the category would be emollient herbs, herbs that are aromatic, that smell really good, that support your nervous system to really, you smell something. I have some rose water next to me, but I could spritz it and then I just take a deep breath and I'm like instantly like, oh, okay, calm. So choosing herbs that make you feel that way. The blood staunching herbs might be shepherd's purse or yarrow, which usually you find these herbs in like a sitz bath, herbs that are rich in minerals. We have nettles, oat straw is a good one, herbs that heal tissue. I really like marshmallow leaves and plantain. And I
Marshmallow
love
leaf was one of mine in postpartum that literally came to me so clearly.
I love that. I love it. Marshmallow is one of my top herbal allies for myself personally. So,
Me too.
um,
I was so surprised. I was like,
right?
I never heard of it before. Like I never worked with it. And I'm sure somebody bought it me or gave it me on the market. And I made a tea from it initially. And then I noticed how I felt after I had it. And I was like, this needs to go in my like steam for sure.
I love I love it. They just speak to us so loudly. And then aromatic herbs like lavender, chamomile, rose to support the nervous system. And I'll be creating a document to share to listeners, which kind of breaks it down a little bit further because we could really have a whole episode on herbs, but we don't have time for that.
Honestly. Wow. So I was just remembering as you're talking, I love talking about plants and herbs, and I find it so fascinating. And I remember, like I mentioned, I was making a tea. So the first thing, I don't know why I started doing this, but I always made something that would taste good and that would smell good, like because I wanted to try it first. Like I always taste it. And I have like
Mhm.
this moment where I'm like, okay, like thank you to the plants and like let's please support me like in the best way you know how and like whatever my body needs, I trust you. And that was a really beautiful moment because it started the ceremony and just like awakening the senses. And I think like in postpartum it's a great opportunity to stay connected to our senses because we're like cracked open, right? And I felt after in postpartum, I felt very heightened in all my senses. So it was an opportunity to keep them open and alive and tuned into them. And I feel like the steam really did that with the way that you could feel the steam, you could smell it, you could taste it. Like you have these moments to stay in tune with your senses. And I feel our sense of smell, especially, has been destroyed by the world that we live in. Like we have so many chemicals creating these synthetic smells like in our clothes. And I'm not saying, I don't mean to like project, I mean in the world, but like in washing liquid, like in perfume, in baby products, like there's so much there that just like cuts us off. And I feel like our sense of smell is one of them.
Yeah, just like using what is drawn to you to touch down and stay in your body because you're right. We are cracked wide open, and steaming is such a great opportunity to sit and collect ourselves and let the process of what miracle just happened, all the experience from, you know, everything that birth can encompass, to sit and absorb it and let the steam help you digest it emotionally and spiritually.
Perfect, like pulling together of what I was trying to say. So, first of all, I just want to say thank you as well for creating this resource for the listeners, and that's absolutely incredible and be so helpful. I just wanted to ask you about the positioning before we like pull this and wrap this up. Because
Sure. Yeah.
there's so much, right? So many stools that I've seen out there now and they're incredible. But what if the mother doesn't have that? What would you recommend?
So if you don't have a steam seat for postpartum, which I actually like very like all of the ways that you can steam. Postpartum is one of the ways that I actually do recommend to get some type of steam seat or some type of structure that holds you because a lot of the times after having the baby or we might be dealing with prolapse or hemorrhoids and squatting just ain't it when we're trying to do that healing work. So, you can buy one or you can borrow or rent one, or it's really, if you're handy, why not build one? But to just avoid plastic bowls. But my favorite method of steaming without a steam seat is to push two chairs together to create a V in the opening so that way you can stack up books or maybe a wooden block underneath it to put your steam pot on it. But each chair basically holds a cheek and a thigh. So you're, very supported, but and this varies on what do your chairs look like. Um, but yeah, you would sit on the two chairs and you can adjust the height of the steam pot. And then there's also the option of doing it on the floor, wrapping up your pot with a towel and kneeling over it. You can use a couch to actually like lean over it and just rest because we want to promote our body to be in a rest and digest where we can really heal. A lot of the times, if we're, hovering or squatting or even kneeling, we can kind of feel stressed and we don't want to be that way. So, yeah.
That's such a good point. Like, there's been so many times when I've been like doing makeshift things and, like maybe I've been squatting, but after a few minutes, like 30 seconds, I just feel uncomfortable in my body and I'm kind of just like, okay, I'm ready to finish. But then I love the stool idea. And I think that is absolutely wonderful. I'll be trying that myself. I'm actually going back to Peru soon and I have a stool waiting for me, which somebody made. And yeah, you can get, if you know someone who's handy, you can get all the dimensions off of, if you go on like Amazon underneath, it'll show you most of the time, like the measurements. If you know someone, like just get them to make it for you and say, don't put any paint on it or seal it or anything like that. Like you can seal it with olive oil or something if you want to make it look pretty. But yeah, I think this could be a really nice time to be creative and also ask for your like postpartum gifts as well, because there's nothing like being comfortable while you're steaming. So you can just like be with it instead of thinking, am I going to like touch the pan and burn my like vulva right now or my ass or my inner thighs? And like, how long can I hold this position? Like nobody wants to be feeling that in postpartum.
Absolutely. Now is the time to, call it in with your mother's blessing ceremonies, your,
Yes,
the big
exactly.
registry. So I just really quickly want to note the other benefits of postpartum steaming, which include reducing skin and tissue swelling and, that increase of circulation increases blood flow, nourishment, and oxygenation for those cells, for those tissues, muscles, ligaments, will just be so supportive to the healing process, as well as the dispersing of water retention and bloating that we may experience. And then I guess it's not understated, but I really want to stress that steaming can really help us with our nervous system, soothe us emotionally, and we can really lean in on steam to hold and care for us. And I think that's just such a beautiful, powerful way that we can bring in self-care and, prioritize healing during this time of our life.
Oh, thank you for bringing that in and rounding this conversation up. It's been absolutely wonderful to speak with you. And I would love for you to share with the listeners where they can find you and what you have to offer online.
You can find me on www.moonbeamsteams.com and my Instagram, Moonbeam Steams. So thank you so much, Danielle, for having me. This was such a pleasure. And I'm really excited to continue to connect.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.